Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Systeme.io podcast with me, Natasha Pinto. Join us as we discuss everything digital marketing and entrepreneurship. Here, online business owners take us on a journey, how they went from zero to launch. Today, our guest is Laura Pearman. She is a branding strategist and photographer, creative director, speaker, and vlogger. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So exciting to have you on here. I think always the best place to start is to kind of start right at the beginning. So can you give us a look at your history? What happened on your journey to put you on the path to where you are today?
Wowza, there's a question to get the ball rolling. So I would define myself as someone I've always been entrepreneurial. So I remember at age 12, I did a presentation for my mum in our living room. And I told her that if she got an Avon round in her name, because obviously she was over 18, I would run that business very well and I would still do all my homework. So I set up my first business age 12 with like a gentle piece of fraud. And then I think since then, I have never stopped working. I have really tried over the years. I've had 39 jobs and I'm 39 years old. So I have really done a lot of different jobs over the years. But one thing that always rang true for me was how much I hated reporting to people that I thought were idiots. Like, why is the process like this? Oh, well, it's been like this for 45 years, Laura. Yeah, but if we did it this way, wouldn't that save us money, or wouldn't this make more money? No, we have to do it this way. I feel like I was in discussions like that over and over again when I worked through different jobs as an employee. So I always had this rebellious like ball of fire inside of me. And I was like, well, if I was in charge, I'd do it this way and it would be better. So unsurprisingly, I kind of figured out that I would probably do something in my own right. Now, I had no idea what that was. I went off to university at age 18 and did a degree in marketing and public relations. And I'm quite open about the decision behind that was Sex and the City was really popular at the time of me applying to go to university. And Samantha was in PR. And I thought, wow, she's fabulous. I'll just do PR. So I went and I learned how to do PR. And I remember in my dissertation year, I did a whole investigation around codes of ethics and ethical practice in public relations. And after doing a very deep dive on that, I came home from getting my first degree and announced to my parents, yeah, public relations is evil. I'm not going to be doing that with my life. And my parents hit the roof. Hey, Laura, why have you spent all this money? Why have you got into all this debt? What the hell are you going to do with your life? So I thought, well, I'll just carry on being a bit irresponsible. And I went off traveling. And I went off backpacking, had a grand old time. I ended up getting to Australia and going to an ATM machine after traveling around Southeast Asia, spending far too much of my budget for my whole round the world in a year trip. Got to an ATM in Sydney and realized I'd spent all of the budget for the whole year. So I thought, oh, jeepers, right, I need to get a job. Managed to get a job. Ended up living in Australia for 2 years. And I was like it was in the .com boom. And I was running a marketing plan that I had created myself at age like 25 for the Australian division of this .com business. It was one of those opportunities that you just had to be there to take advantage of it. It went really well, but unfortunately the company wasn't the most ethical of companies and they went under. They were doing something illegal with the other part of their business. So when the company went under, I lost my visa and I had to come home. And at that time, I had fallen in love with Thai cookery. And I thought, okay, I'll just do a market stall. I'll just set up a market stall and I'll make Thai fish cakes and that'll be my business. I'll build an empire built on Thai fish cakes. Like I just wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. So kind of bummed around a little bit, got into more creative things, as well as having a proper office job and working a waitress job in the evenings. And then decided I was going to go traveling again. Went traveling again with my current partner, Tom, and he was a landscape photographer. So one of the big reasons why he was going backpacking around the world was to capture all these beautiful landscapes. And I had no real idea about photography. I thought it was quite cool and creative. But I quickly realized when we were in a van in the middle of the outback in Australia or in New Zealand that you had to be up at like 4 a.m. to get the right angle, to get the sunrise. And I was like, whoa, this is a lot of work. But over a few months, I really got into it, ended up buying a camera in Wellington in New Zealand. And I then did a UCAS application form to go back to photography college here in Newcastle in the middle of the night in an internet cafe. Didn't even have an art GCSE, managed to sort out an interview, and I created a little bit of a portfolio of pictures I had created when I was on the road. And, you know, as luck would have it, my work was good. The tutor saw that I had potential and I was given an unconditional offer. And then I went and did my photography degree. So I was like the grandma in the class when I did that degree. Everyone else was a lot younger than me. I was still in my mid-20s at that point. And I just worked my butt off. Like I loved photography, and I quickly realized that if you wanted to get ahead in the creative industries, a lot of it was about doing hard work on time and being reliable, going against the stereotypical thing that people associate with creatives. And I would hound the lecturers every week. Hey, have you got some work experience for me? I handed my work in early this week. Have you got some experience for me? So by the end of the 2 years of the foundation degree, I had a job offer and I had a CV full of different assistant jobs. So I was able to hit the ground running and get into my photography career. So I then worked in the portraiture business for a few years. I worked for different companies, was poached by another one, learned a lot in a lovely like small town family business where she was doing weddings and babies and families, all that stuff. You learn so much more about people, which is a huge part of the portraiture photography business, as opposed to just being able to take a good photo. And I learned a lot there. And then, like I said, I was poached by a larger organization, which was nearer to home. So I went after it. And then quickly realized that it was a total cowboy outfit. They were ripping people off left, right, and center. Worked there for about 6 months. And then just before Christmas, which is like the high pressure zone of any portraiture photography business, because everyone wants a photo of the kids for grandma. Yeah, exactly. I had 3 or 4 terrible phone calls where people were ringing saying, look, we made an order in August. Where the hell is it? What have you done with our money? And I thought, why am I sitting here taking this from these people? Like, I did my end of the job. I worked really hard on getting those shots. And just decided, I thought, yeah, to hell with this, I can do a better job myself, and walked out and came home and announced to my partner, Tom, yeah, I'm owed wages from the last 2 months. I don't think I'm going to get them. I've just left. I'm going to set up my own business. And that was back in 2012. So spent about 6 months figuring out, right, what do you need to do to set up a business? How do you write a business plan? How do you get funding? Got a mentor, like did a few different schemes, and then set up a portraiture studio and did that for a few years. I did it in the middle of town with a very high rent, then got an accountant, and the accountant was like, what the hell are you doing with a business based in the city center? Like, just get out of town, save yourself the money. So when I did that and then changed and got a second studio, and then I got seriously ill, I kind of burnt myself out and needed to leave the studio. And then I did, after getting out of hospital from a serious burnout, I then thought, right, what can I do instead? So I had all of this studio equipment like in a spare bedroom in our old house, and thought, I'm going to do something that doesn't involve me having to pay for everything. I wonder if I could be an international photographer. So I set myself a goal and then spent the next couple of years working in part-time jobs, as well as doing another start on the business. And then in 2017, I went to social media marketing world. I managed to sell enough brand photo shoots to pay for my ticket and my trip to there, and then come home with a little bit of money as well. And then realized that if I niched my business down and worked in just brand photography, as opposed to wedding photography, baby photography, pet photography, whatever you want photography, it was actually a lot easier. So that was a big lesson for me in niching down. And then just before COVID happened, so that was on a nice steady trajectory going up, making more money every year. I loved that I could travel as well as do my job from my years of backpacking. And then just before COVID, I had a whole tour planned. So I was going to go over to Manchester on the other side of the country from me, and then work my way down, all the way down to Devon, and then finish with a nice vintage style British Riviera holiday after doing about 8 to 10 photo shoots. And then, yeah, COVID happened and the whole thing was cancelled overnight. So I thought, right, okay, we're back at the drawing board again. What do we do? And what I didn't realize when I was specializing and offering brand photography, I was using all of my experience from my first degree and the first jobs that I had in marketing to analyze somebody's brand. I didn't realize how much I had become skilled at doing all of that. Like, let's dissect your brand. What is it that you're trying to show here before planning a photo shoot? I was doing all of this stuff for free. And I was like, surely this is a thing in its own right. What is it? And then realized your fellow guest, Philip Van Dusen, I met him a few years ago at a conference and noticed he was doing a course on how to deliver brand strategy as its own standalone service. And I thought, I think that's what I've been doing. I'm going to go and see what Philip's got to say. So I went and did this course, and yeah, totally makes sense. It brought those two worlds that I've kind of been working on without really focusing on. It brought them together. So that's where I've made another change in the business. So brand strategy is now a standalone service, and I'm now insisting that if somebody wants to do a brand photo shoot with me, that they either have a fully articulated brand and strategy in place, or we work together on that first before we even think about getting the camera out of the bag. And then, as time has progressed over those last 9 years that I've just kind of whistle stopped through, I've been involved in lots of mad creative projects. Like, I've put together fashion shows. I've worked with several different businesses on like a single creative pursuit. I've put together awards events, all sorts of things where people ring me up and say, oh, Laura, can I ask you for a favor? And then before I know it, I'm involved in this big old project. And I realize now those big old projects is creative direction, bringing people together, getting everyone to work. It's like being a project manager, but when you're a project manager with a creative quest. So I thought, well, hell, I'm going to start charging for this now. People have asked me for far too many favors. It's time to make some money from that. So that's where you get the three parts of my of how you so well described me at the top of the show.
Oh, brilliant. And you describe yourself as a Swiss Army knife of creativity.
Yes, a creative.
Because
yeah.
So far, I don't think there's a thing you've listed that you cannot do. So that's a turn of phrase I absolutely love. And do you think that it's necessary that people are so multi-skilled like that now? Do you think it still works to be specialized in just one thing, or especially in the marketing world, do you think it helps to have a toe in every pool?
That's a really good question. What I definitely think people need to become a lot more savvy about, and I'm surprised that, well, it's going to take a while for the education system to catch on, but I think everyone who is planning on going into business needs to be fully on board and accepting of the fact that when you set up a business in the current world, you need to also have a broadcasting element to your business. You need to have your own version of Sky or the BBC, and you need to be constantly talking about what it is that you're doing and showing what you're doing in a consistent, and I'd like to say in a creative way, because I think that is such a clear marker now between the businesses that might have been really traditional but then started a live show and then have seen another boost in their business, compared to the ones who had a traditional business, didn't do anything, and now they're almost rendered like redundant. I think the way that our younger generations consume and the way that they choose to buy things is all centered around very detailed content. And if you're not out there supplying that for them, then I think that will have a massive effect on your business. So I think you need to go into business now with a broadcasting element or collaborating with other people in a broadcasting way, but you need to be out there on a regular basis. And I think, you know, we've had a lot of significant change, and I think it makes it more important that we are able to adapt. So I don't think you necessarily need to be a multidiscipline person, but when you're a specialist and then a crazy world event like COVID happens and it renders your specialism on pause, like my photography business, I could not get on a plane to go and shoot people overseas. You have to think, right, what am I going to do to adapt? So absolutely love that you can be a specialist and an expert, but you also need to be able to broadcast, and you need to be willing to adapt in crazy times.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I think lots of people have experienced a significant change in what their career was, whether it was a conscious decision or a decision that was made for them because their specialty or even just their position was made redundant. So yeah, definitely very true. Now, one of your specialties that we have spoken about is brand strategy. And you speak about the idea in your brochure, which we will definitely link in the description, about your brand being a balloon or a watermelon. Can you expand on that for us, please?
So, okay, everyone who, I feel like there's a lot of noise on the internet, particularly on Instagram, about branding. So if you look at hashtag branding or hashtag brand strategy, you will see a lot of people who know very little about brand strategy talking about what they think brand strategy is. And I'm not the world's expert by any stretch, but I like to think that there's all these things, these like stuff, checklists, and a lot of gurus or people who run memberships get an idea of this list of things and then tell their followers, do this list of things, and then that will mean you have a brand. So that list of things could be like, get a logo, pick a font, pick some colors, have a thing that you talk about that has something to do with your personality, like your cat or your kids, get some photos done, make a website, get an email. It's like all this stuff, and people are stressed out starting a business going, oh my God, I need to have all these things. Like, what the heck? Like, what's the point? Well, when you have all these things and nothing really holding them together, that is how I define a balloon brand. It's just a bunch of things kind of very flimsily, loosely held together with a bunch of hot air. When you have a watermelon brand, you have the substance, the stuff in the middle, that juicy pink goodness flesh with all of your jewel-like seeds. And I like to refer to the jewel-like seeds as seeds of substance about your brand. So why do you exist in the first place? What do you actually stand for as a human? What do you stand for as a leader of this business? Like, what is your legacy? What do you want to make change when you're on your deathbed or people are coming to your funeral after you've done this business? What mark will you have left on history? That's a great way to start thinking about brand strategy. But then when you start thinking about, right, okay, so this is what I stand for and this is what I stand against, this is what we provide, right? Who exactly do we provide this thing for? Is it a product that people need? What does it do to their lives after they've bought it? And how does that affect what you stand for or stand against? Like, are you creating a community here of people who are, I don't know, they have a real passion about black bin bags? You know, it can really be anything. But now we have these big altruistic quests, and it's a huge part of branding. And I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. Knowing that, and then knowing exactly who you serve and why, is part of the jewel-like seeds of substance. Then you want to take a little look around in the marketplace. So who else is offering the same thing at the same sort of price as you to the same sort of people? Is there some way that we need to develop a spirited rivalry with them? Or actually, should we be maybe thinking about changing one of those variables so that we're not in direct competition with them? Maybe they serve women women who are in their 50s and they don't have children, but they have fur babies. And actually, if you decide that you're going to serve men who are in their 20s with the same thing at the same price, you guys can coexist in that marketplace because you're not after the same type of client. And actually, over time, you can develop a fun little rivalry, or you can collaborate in some way to serve the joint community of women with cats and men in their 20s. Who knows? There could be a TV show there. But that's all of the substance, the stuff that should hold it together. And that all of those things should be the drivers for all of the stuff that you're getting told about. So if you're going to do an email list, well, if we're going to be serving women in their 50s, do they give a damn about email? Like, are they going to genuinely appreciate that? So maybe that's a deciding factor whether you should go ahead and get that training and pay for that software or not. Where do they show up on social media? Then you can start getting a little bit more focused about what type of content you want to create for them. Maybe there's some sort of a cat grooming show that you do on YouTube, and the subtext to that cat grooming show is your black bin bags. I'm just pulling this stuff from the top of my head, but you can see how having that substance and being a solid watermelon gives all of the other things that you're expected to do to create a brand purpose, mission, and solid reasoning.
Well, definitely. And like that idea of a balloon is also really great because it takes just one sharp, pointy object to completely deflate your brand strategy.
Oof. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so definitely if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about that and find out how you can make them a watermelon brand rather than a balloon brand, they must take a look at your pamphlets. Now,
yes.
Another thing I would like to talk about is how do you pull that kind of strategy through to actual touch points for small businesses? So you spoke a bit about how small business owners, and I agree with this, they're definitely overwhelmed by all of these things that they need to do. They need the email list, they need to pick a color and have this logo, they need a website, they need to be on all of the social media, they need a Facebook group. How do you pull through a strategy? So how do you pull it through for a small business, and where should they focus first?
So if you're just setting up a business, and the rest of the industry will hate me for saying this, especially people who do branding for startups, but my view is, having experienced this myself firsthand, you want to fudge that for as long as possible. Like, you could have a Times New Roman dot as your logo for the first 3 years of running a business. And what you really need to focus on when you're setting up a business is getting in regular sales and figuring out who are the people that you genuinely want to work with. It's really important when you first set up, like I described with my studio, where I was photographing everyone and quite literally their dog as well. You have to figure out just from firsthand who you hate working with. Like, I really did not enjoy photographing weddings. I was good at it. People were happy with me. I provided a good service. I usually got on really well with the couple that were being married, but the actual work, I hated doing it. It was a horrible, long old day. There's always a family drama going on that you have to kind of navigate around. It just isn't for me. But I had to do like 30, 40 weddings before I realized, this is not my happy place. This is not why I set up my business. I felt that because people who do photography do weddings because that is good money. I had to go through that experience myself. So my advice, if you are starting up your business and you're getting stressed out about what you stand for and what you stand against, maybe think about what is it that you're trying to achieve from setting up this business. Most people go into business because they want financial freedom. They want to be able to dictate the schedule of their lives. In the first 3 years of business, that is really, really hard to get to. You want to aim for that in like 5 or 10 years. I'm still not there yet, but you get addicted to it. Yeah. So I would say you want to focus on getting sales in. Get sales in from as many different types of people as possible. But over that process, so over your first 20, 30 clients, maybe even 50 clients, you need to do a little bit of an exit evaluation on them. And it's just an internal thing where you say, right, did I like this person? If the answer is no, what is it that I didn't like about them? Did they pay me what I was worth? Did they cause a stink? Like, were they just a nightmare at every step of the way? Were they pure joy? Like, did I just really love them? Like, would I put them on my Christmas card list from here on forward? And do I genuinely care what happens to them after we've done business? And after you've gathered that data, you will have some really key information about who you genuinely like to work with. And there will be a similarity between the people that you've given like the 10 out of 10, really like them score, and the people who you've given the 1 out of 10, like, oh my God, please don't come to my business anymore. That will give you some information to start getting really clear about your brand strategy. But I think my advice for the first 2 to 3 years is just get some sales coming in. A really big part of that is becoming part of your network. And I would say, like I said before, creating content in some way or being heavily involved in curating content from your industry or showing up as a guest on other people's content is a great way to get your name out there and increase your visibility, because that's a really important part of getting those first sales.
Definitely. I think that's a very honest bit of advice for startups, because oftentimes people are like, oh no, the first thing you definitely need is an audience, so you need to build that email list. And yeah, there's no telling how many you'll get on that email list until you start getting sales, and you can't like split test or start checking what works and what doesn't until you do have sales, you do have customers, you do have people who
Exactly.
Yes, I like this person, or I'm really going to avoid ever selling this person something again. All right, now
I did when I first set up the studio, I remember doing a massive DM blast to everyone on my Facebook, like my personal Facebook account, saying, hi, it's Laura here. Maybe we went to school together. Maybe you know one of my relatives. I'm setting up a business. I'm looking to work with these people. It's this much. Can you please bear me in mind for any conversations? And I got like 25 shoots out of that. So that is a great way to just get started and try and get on the phone and build up that visibility. But the sales will come after that.
Yeah, definitely. And then you speak about being a brand photographer. So can you give our audience an idea of why brand photography is so important? Because I think sometimes they can get lost in this idea of, okay, logo, colors, done.
Yes, absolutely. So brand photography, going in line with what we've talked about on showing up and broadcasting, brand photography is very close to that. And a lot of people are jumping on the trend of having a personal brand. And the argument around having a personal brand is it's like branding, right? You have one, whether you know it or not. It's what people say about you when you've left the room. So what can you do to be responsible for that personal brand? And that goes whether you're an employee or a business owner, by the way. When you're showing up as a personal brand, you need to have a story. Like when I'm playing a brand shoot, it's not about, oh, I have a new dress, I really like this beach, so there you go, I'll wear this dress to the beach, there you go. That's a portrait session. You're pulling together some loose inspirations that have jack all to do with your brand, and you're creating probably some very beautiful photographs, but they don't actually do anything for your brand. Brand photos are all about who are you and where are you going? So I like to try and think of how can we explain to somebody looking at this photo or these sets of photos what it's like to be the person behind the business. Like, what is the horrible dark days, the behind the scenes stuff that nobody wants to share? Can we capture that? But can we capture that in a beautiful way? Does this person work with other people? What does that person that they work with feel like? What are the sets of emotions? How do we shoot that? How do we capture that? How do we make it easy for us to understand what this business owner is about? So, going back to the women in their 50s, I want the cats in that photo shoot because it's a key part of, part of it. Maybe we get a stylist to dress her up in a beautiful haute couture dress made out of black bin bags. I don't know. There's ways that you pull through the ideas of the brand into the planning and the orchestration of the photo shoot. My personal style with brand photography is to always go on the higher end. So I like quite complicated lighting setups. I like to scout really interesting locations options. I really like the challenge of pulling off, like finding a really cool place that no one else has thought of. And I like to come with a crew as well, if possible. So I like to have a hair and makeup person on set. I like to make sure that there's a stylist who's helped to work with me to figure out the exact right sets of outfits that are going to convey the brand. And then you can get into other things like special effects or hiring a cool car. Like it goes on and on, but that is my personal preference in style. But the brand, in terms of brand photography, is usually about the owner and the leader of that business and trying to evoke and explain and articulate in a creative way in a single image without words what the brand is about.
Now, how do you take that and then shrink it down for a small business that's just starting? Like, what's one tactic?
So if you're a small business owner, I do not recommend you fork out a few grand on a brand photo shoot session. Like, that is a foolish expenditure while you're still trying to figure out who your ideal people are and how much you want to charge them and what you want to sell them. Instead, I would say you need to start documenting religiously what it's like in a day-to-day way. And you have a phone. I am sure you have a smartphone. If you haven't got a smartphone contract as part of your first business expense, you need to do that. And you need to start getting really good at creating selfies. So what does it look like when you're on your commute? What does it look like when you're pulling an all-nighter, stuffing boxes or doing a marketing campaign? What is it like when you've got downtime? Which other business owners have you just met? Can you get a selfie with them? Like, the list goes on and on, but you should be creating those photo assets for yourself in a selfie way for as long as absolutely possible. And I have a diagram actually that I usually put up when I do public speaking, and I call it the Selfie Pyramid. And you can imagine a pyramid. So at the top of the pyramid is your uber polished, perfect self in a brand photograph. But underneath those is all of your selfies. So you can see the proportion and the ratio between selfies and brand photo shoot. You can be creating the bottom of the pyramid right now, straight away. Like, I'm at the bank, like, here's a selfie of me at the bank. I've just set up the bank account, or I've just got my office keys. Here's the keys. You know, every single thing. Document, and get it out and share it on social and just start logging it and creating a backup. And when you're 10 years down the road, you're going to have all these amazing assets that describe your story. And when you're ready to book a brand photographer in a couple of years' time, you can say, right, here is the bank of visual assets that we already have. This is quite literally the picture story of our business to date. You digest that, and then you come back with a plan for a photo shoot. And the photographer that you hire will be able to do that really easily.
That's brilliant, and such a great way to, especially while you're just starting out, to think towards your future and invest in user ready. And to keep on the topic of social media, so tell us about Mwah TV.
So Mwah TV is it's partly a creative outlet for me. You know, I really enjoy the idea of being like a chat show host. It's a game that me and my sister used to play when we were little girls. Like, we'd make believe that we were chat show hosts. It was like a thing. And I love like certain funny chat show takes. So like French and Saunders or Victoria Wood. Certain comedians from when I was a kid in the 80s really appeal to me. I also love Fanny Craddock, who is like an old-fashioned cook, and she was like full of shade. She was really horrible while she was making food, and that's one of my inspirations. And then the other is probably RuPaul. So we were just talking before we started the recording. I'm usually all lashed up and I have like a whole layer of makeup on, but this is the real stripped back me today, so I'm not in my drag. But all of those inspirations were in my mind when I thought about creating some consistent, regular content. So when you see the show, you can see those are the different threads that I've pulled together while I'm talking about brand strategy or planning a photo shoot, or I'm showcasing what it's like when you're on a session with me. And I needed to have that creative impetus, because I need to be personally interested creatively to keep creating content. That's the thing with creating content like a podcast or like a show. You have to have something driving you beyond just looking for subscriber counts or watch time, especially if you're a creative mind. So that's a piece of advice that I would say if you're thinking about setting up a show, come up with something that you find funny or creative, and that will keep you going, like come up with a format behind it. But my quest with it really is to have some fun being creative and kind of document the British female side of working in the creative industries, being in photography. That's a very male dominated industry. And then the brand strategy side as well. We've got a lot of very loud voices in America, but not a lot of people talking about it in the British way. We have a couple of guys, but no women. So that's my goal with that. I want to keep turning out fun, vintage TV inspired content around those topics, but with the creative ideas as the aesthetic.
Well, I think that's also a great example of what you were just talking about, of like kind of creating all that content that'll tell your story that you've got now and you can keep using forever. To speak a little bit more about being a woman in business. So I'd like you to comment on a statistic. So 47% of women started a business in the last year, compared to 44% of men. And that has something to do with the fact that lots more women lost their jobs, and we're also expected to do a lot of unpaid work like caretaking and managing a family. However, there's another statistic that still leaves women as only a third of business owners globally. So
God.
Do you think that this is going to slowly improve, or how do you find it being a woman in business? Because it is true, a lot of even the podcast guests here have been working my damnedest to get some more women on here. So what do you think?
It's a really interesting question. So I have a couple of different stories. One from when I was getting started in photography. I remember a lady telling me as she was humping like some real heavy lights on her shoulders, and she was like pulling stuff like an inordinate amount of weight. She was like, if you want to get ahead in photography, I advise you to take up Olympic weightlifting now. If you can't lift more than this, you're done for. Like she was just really, she had like a weightlifter's belt on. She was a tiny little woman, but she was humping all this equipment. And I actually did take up Olympic weightlifting. That's another story for another time. But sometimes like the physical part of photography is a large part in like fashion, high-end editorial. If you're not prepared to do that grunt work, it is very hard to break through to be given the opportunity as a final photographer behind the camera. And I really had a hard time getting my mind around that when I was trying to get into photography all those years ago. So that's an issue. I think we are trying, like the BIPP, the British Institute of Professional Photographers, are trying to shine a light more on women photographers and women shooting photography in a very different way to men. But I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. If I can be part of that conversation, of course I will be part of it. But it is a very interesting spread of income as well when you look at the high-end photographers who can command like $1 million to show up and photograph a celebrity for 5 minutes, compared to all of those portraiture studios that are quite female-centric, working with newborn babies, people doing their weddings. The amount of work that these two photographers are doing is probably like this, but the amount of money is like this. So that's really interesting. I think I am a passionate feminist, and I do believe that women should be in charge of the world. I think we need to clean it up and sort it out. We are massively underrepresented in every parliament across the world, and that is a huge problem for a lot of reasons. We can't get free childcare. I know so many amazing women on my journey for the last 9 years who set up incredible businesses and have started getting real traction after all of that hard work. And then they've had to take time off because they want to have a baby. and then trying to get back into that level, that swing of things is impossible. Like, who's going to look after the baby? How am I possibly going to return to work? There's this idea that entrepreneurs choose when they want to work. Well, if you've got a baby and a house to run, guess what? Your time's pretty full, and your choice of hours might be like 3 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah.
But is that really freedom? Like, I don't think it is.
No.
So there are some fundamental things that need to happen on a political level for us to be given a level playing field. And I'm happy to support that conversation and do what I can as a woman in business to say that those changes need to be made ASAP. And I think maybe this idea of putting money where you care, I just had a thing come through the door today. Actually, it's so random. I'm quite big on doing what I can for the environment, and it was this environmental milkman, and it was a letter saying that I was so moved by watching Blue Planet, and I refer to David Attenborough as Saint Attenborough. And I was like, oh my god, I love this person. So I carried on reading, and they said that they've given up their career in corporate and they're now doing a traditional milk round because it's plastic free. If you're interested, go to the website. I was like, that is like the best thing I've had through the front door in terms of marketing literature in ages. So I think this idea of putting money where you care could actually be really good for women. Women are that, there's a lot now in the beauty industry that's starting to pop up. You can buy products that have alignment with certain values. And I think that women might be able to push that a little bit further, where as more emotional creatures stereotypically, maybe there's something there in how we can start developing the economy into something that's a much more even playing field.
Well, definitely. And I think COVID's also sort of thrown a spanner in the works by forcing everyone to be at home, not just mom. There's been a time for everyone to kind of like, okay, cool, you can take the kids from 4 to 9 this afternoon. I'm going to go work on my business, which is great to see. Unfortunate circumstances, definitely, but I hope that it continues to trend that way so that everything is a little bit
It goes the other way though as well. Like HR departments across the land should be saying to men, like, right, well, you have fathered a child now. It's not just mother's load. So part of your package as an employee is that when your child needs to go to the dentist or you need to take time off because they're sick, it should be evenly spread. And that there's a cultural aspect, like men wanting to like be a man and not do that stuff, that's going to take a lot of time. But if we can change it systemically, so paternity leave is a great example of that. That's starting to push in that direction. But it should be, if you have brought a child into the world, then you are both equally responsible as much as possible.
And then our last big question, do you have any medium-term or long-term goals that you're looking towards in the future?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually have been planning out next year on my whiteboard, which you can't see, it's just on the side here of the screen. And I've kind of, I still feel like we're recovering from COVID. So I don't want to be pushing heavily on my photo shoots. And actually what COVID taught me around that was you don't need to kill yourself you don't need to be getting on a plane and traveling long haul every month to schlep all this stuff around and do pictures. So what if we increase the price on that and that becomes more of a luxurious endpoint, but there is still all these amazing things that you can do when you choose to work with the Laura Pearman creative brand. So that's one of my priorities, continuing with that separation, that I am more than just a photographer now. And one of the things that I'm trying to get into as a top priority next year, I've worked with a couple of manufacturing clients, and I think that is a really interesting space in the British economy following Brexit and following COVID, and now with a lot more environmental drive behind it with the G8 summit and such. Like, that's a space that I want to be involved in. So I'm trying to pick up conversations and track down people that I know who work in that world, because I want to just see what's shaken there. So that's on my radar next year. And who knows, maybe in a couple more years, I can be a little bit more involved in that space.
That's exciting. All right.
Yeah.
So now to close, just a couple of short questions.
Sure.
Is there one book or podcast or resource that you could recommend to our listeners, especially someone just starting out?
Well, I just got through reading Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And let me tell you, I am not a numbers person. Like, I really hate maths. Thank God for the Excel spreadsheet formula, because I rarely know what change I'm due when I go to the shop to buy groceries. That's how bad I am at numbers. And I actually found Profit First really hard to read because of my feelings about mathematics. But having read it and having persevered with it, that is another one of the things on the whiteboard. I want to move the way that we're doing the finances in the business to more of a profit first direction. So I would say to anybody who's starting a business to absolutely check that book out. And if you get to like chapter 4 and you just want to cry and throw it out the window, know that I felt exactly the same way. And in order to get through the rest of the book, I made an agreement with myself that every time I have my bubble bath on a weeknight, I would read like 3 or 4 pages and then put it down. So I've been like chugging away and I finally got it done. And I'm really glad that I did. So that's a book I would recommend. In terms of podcast and content, I think you can learn so much online for free now. And that is really important when you're getting started with your business. However, that comes with a caveat. You don't want to get sucked into the vortex of the world of helpful content and not actually do any work. So maybe pick like one big priority, watch like an afternoon's worth of content about that, or listen to 3 podcasts about that, and then hit stop and then get on and do the thing. So many people get sucked into like binging a whole channel, or, oh, I just gave up a whole week of my life and I've listened to 300 podcasts from this person and now I love them, and now I'm going to pay them and join their membership, and then I'm going to go to their event. Well, hang on a minute. How is that generating money in your business?
Yeah.
It's not. So I think you can learn stuff online, solve little problems online, but I would say have a limit with yourself, because you need to focus on getting those sales in.
Definitely. And then looking back, what piece of advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Oh, Lordy Lou. I would have said, you are going to be in charge eventually. Carry on working really hard. This degree that you're about to do is probably going to help you, but it's not the be all and the end all. So don't worry about it. And go and explore the world, because you're going to learn a lot about yourself when you do that.
Brilliant. And then finally, where can our listeners find you? If you just say your tags and your website out loud, I will pop them in the description.
Awesome. So I am Laura P Creative everywhere online. I'm Laura Pearman on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me there. And then I would love you to come and check out Mwah TV, but I don't want you to sit and watch it for 3 days straight. I want you to pick a time. We'll pick a couple of short episodes on there and check it out. So we can put a link to Mwah TV on YouTube, and then Laura P Creative everywhere else on social.
Okay, perfect. Laura, thank you so much for joining me today and giving me your time. And thank you to our listeners today. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on a podcasting app, subscribe to the Systeme podcast so that you never miss an episode. Systeme.io is a digital marketing software platform packed with all the tools you need to run your online business.